Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Johan and I'm a typical Dutchman, and I react to all kinds of videos about life and living in the US and life and living in Europe or the Netherlands specifically. And today we're gonna take a look again, I will say we visit again the channel of Tiana Thompson for Everything Wrong with America Part 2. Yesterday we did Part 1 and she asked her audience if she should do a Part 2. So she did, and let's take a look at it. I don't know what it is. Yesterday's video was very confronting, I guess, for a lot of the Americans, but not that surprising for me or for a lot of Americans what she talked about, what was wrong, especially when it was about getting into all kinds of depth. But Part 2, I'm curious what it is. I already joined, so I have to like this again, and then let's take a look what she has to say.
In 2023, prison inmates in California fought wildfires for $1 an hour. And when their sentences ended, most states wouldn't certify them as professional firefighters due to their criminal records. And the companies that profited from that prison labor, well, they're in your living room with you every night, running ads around the clock, just like the pharmaceutical companies marketing prescription drugs directly to you on television, something only 2 countries in the world allow. And while those ads are running, behind the scenes, a private corporation you never hired is generating a score that controls your ability to rent a house, buy a car, or even get a job. And when you do get that job, if you're planning on having a baby, well, you better pray your boss is feeling generous. I recently made a video about things that are completely normal in America, but that would be unthinkable almost anywhere else in the world. A lot of you watched that video, and a lot of you had something to say about it. This is part 2.
This is Part 2, okay. The preview about prison labor and pharmaceuticals, and let's take a look. Crime pays.
This is Marcus. Marcus spent 6 years in a Texas state prison, and during those 6 years, he worked. Not in a workshop or stamping license plates like we're led to believe on TV. But Marcus was actually sent into active wildfire zones to dig containment lines alongside professional firefighters. And he was paid $1.50 per day. When Marcus was released from prison, he had $312 to his name. He had 6 years of genuine, dangerous, life-saving experience fighting wildfires. He wanted to continue to do this job and do it professionally because it's the one thing he knew he was good at, and he knew it would give him a head start into getting his life back on track. So he applied to become a firefighter, and he was denied. Because in most states, a felony record disqualifies you from professional firefighting certification. So Marcus fought fires for essentially free for the state of Texas. And that same state of Texas will not let Marcus fight fires for a living. Here's a sentence from the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. There it is. Except as punishment for crime. It's right there in plain text, and it has always been right there. The United States has the largest prison population on Earth. Roughly 2 million people are in
2 million. Yeah, I know it's what I said it in other videos too, because sometimes you don't have another choice because there is no security net, there is no backup if you lose your job, and you can, like you saw yesterday, you can lose your job, you can be fired from one day to the next. So some people just commit a crime to get a roof above his head and to get some kind of warm meal. So I can understand that. 2 million. Damn.
incarcerated, according to the Prison Policy Initiative. Of those 2 million inmates, approximately 800,000, roughly 2/3 of the prison population, and about the same population of the city of San Francisco, are put to work for just a few pennies an hour. According to a landmark 2022 report by the ACLU and the University of Chicago Law School, the average minimum wage across state prisons is 13 cents an hour. The average maximum wage is 52 cents an hour. And as of 2026, Nothing has changed. Federal Prison Industries, the government-run program officially called Unicor, which sells products directly to federal agencies, still starts at 23 cents per hour. To be clear about what that means in practice, a full 8-hour work shift would earn you somewhere between $1 and $4 before deductions. Because yes, even in prison, you get deductions
Yeah, have
taken
to
out of
pay
your paycheck.
taxes.
So what a worker actually pockets after a full day of labor can be less than $1. And then there are 7 states in the US, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Texas, where the majority of prison workers receive no wages at all. Not low wages or minimum wage, nothing. $0 for a full day of work. Now here's a number to think about. The ACLU actually calculated that incarcerated workers in the United States produce approximately $11 billion in value every year, over $2 billion in manufactured goods, and nearly $9 billion in the maintenance and operation of the prison facilities themselves. The prisoners are, in a very real sense, subsidizing the cost of their own incarceration. So, what are the products that these prisoners are making? Unicor is the federal government's own manufacturing arm, which is staffed almost entirely by incarcerated workers. It supplies federal agencies with office furniture, military uniforms, mattresses, body armor components, and electronic equipment. The next time a federal employee sits down at their desk, there's a reasonable chance that that desk was built by someone earning less than 50 cents an hour. Unicor is a multi-$100 million operation, and its only workforce is people who have no meaningful ability to refuse. At the state level, it goes even further. Victoria's Secret, historically, has used prison labor in the past. McDonald's uniforms have been stitched in correctional facilities. And in California, possibly the most striking example, incarcerated people fight wildfires. They're trained to clear brush, to dig fire lines, and they run towards the same wildfires that professional firefighters do. And their base pay has historically been under $1 an hour. And the state of
Yeah, that's amazing. It's when they do their job, like stitching clothing and making license plates, etc., but doing life endangered, putting their life in danger to put out wildfires. And then not voluntarily, they are. It's insane. It's insane. You can't treat people. They are still people. You can't treat people like that. You can't.
Alabama is the most brazen example of all.
Well, a lot of people are calling it modern slavery. Does that feel right?
I was just about to say, that's slavery. You took away the whips, but you put the paperwork. Took away the masters and you put them in uniform. Same difference. Same difference.
No state in the U.S. has a longer history of contracting prisoners out to private companies than the state of Alabama. The system dates back more than 150 years, starting with the convict leasing era that effectively replaced slavery after the Civil War. They found that over 500 businesses had leased incarcerated workers from Alabama's prison system in just the past few years. And these are big names like Burger King, Best Western, Bama Budweiser, companies that we know. More than 10,000 inmates had logged a combined 17 million work hours outside prison walls, at car part manufacturers, meat processing plants, and distribution centers for retailers like Walmart. They cleaned hotels, they built kitchen cabinets, they constructed doors for homes that are sold at Lowe's, they built trailers that are pulled behind semi-trucks, and the state took a cut of every paycheck. Even for the inmates working outside prison, earning at least minimum wage, the state of Alabama siphons 40% off the top, then adds fees.
Whoa.
$5 a day for the ride to work from prison to the establishment, $15 a month for laundry. So by the time the deductions are done, there's almost nothing left. And if they refuse to work, they can be denied family visits, sent to higher security facilities, prisons that are so dangerous that the federal government filed a lawsuit calling conditions there unconstitutional. Or they can lose their shot at an early release. The state of Alabama granted parole to just 8% of
That's not. Yeah, who said that's slavery, but that's not. That's extortion. There's no extortion to do slavery work. Ooh. Great going on, United States.
eligible prisoners last year, which is their all-time low, one of the worst rates in the country. So the choice is simple: work for almost nothing or risk never going home. Now let's compare this globally, because that's where it gets interesting, because it's not like the rest of the world doesn't have prison labor. They do. In the European Union, prison labor is permitted, but it must generally be voluntary, and in many countries it must be paid at or near minimum wage. Norway frames its prison work programs explicitly as vocational rehabilitation. The International Labor Organization defines forced labor as work extracted under menace of penalty, and legal scholars have openly debated whether the American prison labor system meets that definition. The point I'm making here is not that people shouldn't work in prison, but it's the combination of factors that make America an outlier in this case. the near zero wages, the fact that it's not voluntary in many facilities, the scale of the industrial production involved, and the constitutional clause that makes the whole thing essentially untouchable by normal legal challenge. Now,
That's the part that we're talking about. It's yeah, okay. I reacted already. It's amazing.
some states have started trying to fix this. Colorado, for example, passed a constitutional amendment in 2018 removing the punishment for crime exception from their state constitution. Nebraska and Utah followed suit in 2020. Alabama, Tennessee, Vermont, and Oregon passed similar measures in 2022. So it is possible to change this, and voters across the political spectrum have done exactly that, at the state level at least. But at the federal level, at least for now, the clause remains. Let's take a world tour of parental leave policies. Ethiopia
Parental leave. Oh, was that Zambia?
guarantees 90 days of paid maternity leave. In Cameroon, it's 40 policies.
Sorry, I missed the country
Let's take
name.
a world tour of parental leave policies. Ethiopia guarantees 90 days of paid maternity leave. In Cameroon, it's 14 weeks. Mongolia, 120 days. Afghanistan, a country that has been in near continuous armed conflict for decades, mandates 90 days of paid maternity leave. I've had comments on other videos telling me I only compare America to Europe or other wealthy developed countries, and that I should make less biased videos. So there you go. That one's for you. These are not wealthy countries by any means, nor are they countries with robust social safety nets or high tax bases. They are countries that looked at the question of whether a parent should be able to stay home with a newborn without losing their income and answered yes. The United States simply chose to answer differently. The United States guarantees 0 weeks of paid parental leave at the federal level. And when you map every country in the world by whether they mandate paid parental leave, the United States is one of only 2 countries that comes up blank. The other is Papua New Guinea. To put this even more into perspective, every member of the G7 mandates paid parental leave. Every country in the OECD except the United States. The overwhelming majority of countries on Earth that researchers classify as developing nations. All of them have decided that this is the bare minimum, not a luxury. Now, to be fair, the US does have some laws in place. The Family and Medical Leave Act, which was passed in 1993, guarantees 12 weeks leave when you have a child. But there are 2 catches. First, it's completely unpaid. And second, it only applies if you've worked at your company for at least 12 months and your company employs 50 or more people. The Department of Labor's most recent survey found that only 56% of American workers are actually eligible for this, meaning roughly 44% don't qualify at all. Meanwhile, let's take a look at what other wealthy countries actually do. Sweden gives parents a total of 480 days of paid leave per child. That's over 16 months split between both parents, with 90 days reserved for each parent, so that fathers are actually incentivized to take their share of paid leave. For the first 390 of those days, the government pays 80% of your current salary. Germany's system pays between 65 to 67% of your net income, so up to 1,800 euros per month, for up to 14 months when both parents share the leave. And that's just the paid portion. German parents are also legally entitled to take up to 3 years of job-protected leave per child. Japan, which has one of the most generous parental leave policies in Asia, offers up to 12 months of leave for each parent, with the government paying 67% of their salary for the first 6 months. As of April 2025, Japan even added a new benefit, bringing that figure to 80% for the first 4 weeks when both parents take their leave simultaneously. Canada gives parents a choice. Take 40 weeks of paid leave at 55% of earnings, or stretch it to 69 weeks at a lower rate. Either way, with your job protected by law. But parental leave is just one piece of this. Let's talk about vacation, because this is where it gets genuinely strange.
That's the other part. Parental leave, okay, but now we're talking about paid leave.
The United States also has no federal minimum vacation law. None. An employer is legally permitted under federal law to offer 0 paid vacation days, and there is nothing a worker can do about it. The European Union mandates a minimum of 20 days per year. France, Finland, and Austria mandate 25 days, and the UK mandates 28 days per year. What does the average American worker actually get? The average American now earns nearly 24 days per year, but the average amount of days off that they actually take is far fewer. A 2018 study by the US Travel Association found that American workers left 768 million vacation days unused that year. Of those,
Yeah, because they are looked at as you're going, why are you taking a vacation day? Or why are you taking a leave? Don't just do. People feel guilty if they leave the company and then take some leave. So they don't.
236 million days expired completely. So these were benefits that workers had earned, time off that their employers owed them, that simply vanished because they didn't get used in time. So to be clear, these workers didn't run out of vacation days. They had vacation days. They just didn't feel safe enough actually using them. There's a name for this going around in workplace culture research, and it's called vacation shaming. It's the subtle and sometimes not so subtle messaging that taking time off makes you look uncommitted, that the person who stays late at work, skips the holidays, and checks their email even on the weekend is the one who really wants it. But the productivity mythology that underlies American work culture is actually contradicted by the research. An economist at Stanford published a landmark study in the Economic Journal, finding that productivity per hour drops sharply once someone works more than 50 hours a week. Work above 50 hours and the output becomes statistically negligible. Germany and Denmark have robust small business economies, a strong GDP, internationally competitive manufacturing sectors, and they can offer mandatory paid leave and vacation. The argument that America can't afford these things has been made before. It was the same argument made against the 40-hour work week or against child labor laws. And yet, each time those laws were put in place, the economy did not collapse.
Yeah, over here in the Netherlands, I did a video a couple of weeks ago about that we had 32 hours working week. 32 hours as regular.
California, New York, New Jersey, Washington, Massachusetts, and a handful of other states have enacted their own paid family leave programs. Movement on the federal level has been slow, but it is happening. And the fact that state programs exist and function is strong evidence that it's doable. Prison labor, vacation policy, and parental leave, these are all visible. We can see them. The next system I want to talk to you about is nearly invisible. Most Americans encounter it every day without even thinking about it. It quietly shapes almost every major financial decision in your life. And when you try to explain it to someone from another country, they often think you're making it up.
Okay.
Tell me what these things have in common. Whether you can rent an apartment, whether you qualify for a mortgage, and at what interest rate. Whether you can lease a car, what rate you pay on your credit card. Sometimes, how high your car insurance premium will be, or how much you pay for your phone plan. And
Yes, it's your credit score, I believe it's called. Your credit score. This defines everything, as I understand. But maybe she meant something
some states,
else.
whether or not you get hired for a job. All of these things can be determined, in whole or in part, by a single 3-digit number. A number somewhere between 300 and 850. A number generated by private corporations using an algorithm you are not permitted to see, based on data you did not consent to have collected, held by companies that have no government obligation to even be accurate. Americans call this their credit score, and they talk about it like it's the weather, a natural feature of the financial landscape in the US. But it's not normal. It was invented, completely made up, and does not even exist in most other countries. The FICO score was created in 1956 by a company called Fair, Isaac & Company. For decades, it was a niche tool used by some lenders. It then became the dominant standard in the 1980s and 90s, cemented by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, requiring it for mortgage underwriting in 1985. And it pretty much went downhill from there. So essentially, a private company created a product, got regulatory endorsement, and now it shapes the financial lives of 330 million people. Before credit scores, lending decisions were made by local bankers who knew you personally. That system had its own problems. It was rife with redlining, racial discrimination, and personal bias, so I'm not saying it was perfect. Credit scores were sold, in part, as a solution to that. It was meant to be an objective and neutral algorithmic alternative to prejudice. And in some ways, it was an improvement. But here's what the algorithm actually measures. It measures your payment history, which is 35% of your score. The amount of debt you owe is 30%. The length of your credit history, 15%. Credit mix, 10%. New credit inquiries, another 10%. What it does not measure is your income, your savings, your net worth, or your employment stability. So two people earning the same salary with the same savings account and the same general level of financial responsibility can have wildly different credit scores, simply because one of them has had a credit card for longer. And then there's the accuracy problem. A 2021 investigation by Consumer Reports, in which nearly 6,000 volunteers reviewed their own credit files, found that 34% of Americans have had at least one error on their credit report. Earlier research by the Federal Trade Commission found that about 5% of Americans have had errors serious enough to affect their interest rates. These reports are held by 3 private bureaus.
Yeah, interest rates. So your credit score also determines how much you have to pay back?
Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, which have no particular incentive to fix errors quickly, and which you must proactively dispute yourself to have corrected. In France, Italy, and most of continental Europe, there is no equivalent single number score. Banks use income, employment history, and direct relationships to make lending decisions. In the UK, credit reference agencies do exist, but are more strictly regulated, and scores are generally not used in employment decisions. US citizens pay money, literally monthly subscription fees, to access the data that private corporations hold against them.
You pay to see your score? Oh boy. Make money of everything. That's America.
You can freeze your credit, which protects you from fraud, but you have to remember to unfreeze it when you want to do something like rent an apartment, apply for a mortgage, or open any kind of account. And then there's the catch-22 that many young Americans know intimately. To get a credit card, you need to have credit history. But to have credit history, you need to have credit. The standard advice given to young people entering the financial system by banks, by personal finance writers, even by parents, is to get a credit card you don't need, make small purchases that you can immediately pay off, and do this for years in order to build up your credit. Not because this method helps you get ahead financially, but as a ritual to convince an algorithm that you can be trusted with money that you've proven you don't need. The racial dimension here is also documented and significant. Data collected by the Urban Institute shows that white Americans have a median credit score of around 727, while black Americans average around 627. That 100-point gap persists even when controlling for income. Because the system rewards existing access to credit, like the length of your credit history or your credit mix, it can entrench historical inequalities rather than correct for them. It measures the legacy of who had access to these financial systems first, and not just who is financially responsible today. There are some reforms being made that are currently being put in motion. VantageScore, for example, is an alternative credit reporting model, and it aims to incorporate more data points. Some lenders are beginning to use open banking data with actual account balances, payment history on rent and utilities to help boost your score. And some rent reporting initiatives that let your monthly rent count towards your credit history are slowly gaining traction. But for now, that 3-digit number reigns supreme. We've talked about systems that affect how you work, when you rest, and how you borrow. The last one I want to talk about is the most direct. It walks into your living room, it sits down on the couch next to you, and it starts suggesting that you ask your doctor about something. If you have ever watched TV in the US, we've all seen these come across our television. The beautiful golden light, the couple walking hand in hand along the beach at sunset, a family laughing at a backyard barbecue, a golden retriever running around, maybe a grandma hugging her grandchild, a soft acoustic guitar in the background, then a voice, calm and reassuring.
Tremfya is a prescription medication used to treat adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Do not use Tremfya if you are allergic to Tremfya.
And then the fine print. Tremfya may cause serious side effects, including infections and a condition where the immune system attacks the body. For some people, seeing this on your TV may sound crazy. But for a US citizen, this is your average Tuesday night. It's what comes on after the news. It's completely, unremarkably normal. Only 2 countries in the world permit direct-to-consumer advertising of prescription drugs: the United States and New Zealand. It wasn't always legal in America either. Before 1985, the FDA essentially prohibited it. In 1997, the FDA loosened the rules around broadcast advertising and the floodgates opened. And surprisingly, the research shows that this type of advertising actually works. A landmark study published in the Journal of the American
Man, I did know this, but how normal is it there and how abnormal it is over here in Europe or the rest of the world?
American Medical Association found that doctors fill those requests roughly half the time, and in some instances, considerably more than half the time, even when the requested drug isn't the ideal first-line treatment for that patient. And this connects directly to why Americans pay so much more for prescription drugs than anywhere else on Earth. A 2021 study by the RAND Corporation found that Americans pay roughly 2.5 times more for the same medications than people in comparable countries around the world. And for brand name drugs specifically, the gap is even larger, closer to 3.5 times the price. A 2024 update of that same study found that those gaps had widened even further. There are multiple reasons for that. The lack of price negotiation, patent protections, the structure of the insurance system in the US, just to name a few. But the advertising spend is part of the loop. High prices on drugs fund advertising, and advertising drives high demand for those high-priced drugs. And the higher demand justifies the higher prices.
Yeah, and said to use it for R&D. So the high price is used for R&D, but there's also, your advertisement. So
The pharmaceutical industry's defense of these direct-to-consumer advertisings argues that these ads actually raise awareness of conditions that people might not have known that they had. They argue that someone who sees an ad for a COPD medication or a blood clot drug might go to their doctor, get diagnosed, and get treatment that they desperately need. But then that same logic is used to advertise drugs for restless leg syndrome, erectile dysfunction, hair thinning, and eyelash growth. So the condition awareness argument covers a very wide tent. Now let's talk about New Zealand, because they
it may look like I feel the same, yes. Talking somebody into a disease without actually having that disease or that condition.
They also allow direct-to-consumer advertising for drugs, but the outcome looks very different. Why? Because New Zealand has a nationalized pharmaceutical pricing body called Pharmac that negotiates drug prices on behalf of the entire country. So even if an ad drives demand for a drug, the price that New Zealanders pay for it is controlled. The incentive structure there is different. In the United States, there's no equivalent ceiling. It's free market pricing and open advertising simultaneously. Multiple bills have been introduced in Congress to ban or restrict drug advertising, but none of them have passed. But the American Medical Association, the largest physician organization in the country, formally called for a ban of these ads in 2015. And polls consistently show that somewhere between 75 and 80% of Americans actually support restrictions on pharmaceutical advertising. This is actually one of those rare issues with genuine bipartisan public agreement. But that political will, so far, hasn't matched it. Let's bring it back to where we started. Marcus fighting fires for $1 a day, the new mom burning through her savings at 8 weeks postpartum because she has literally no other choice. The credit score you never consented to, inhibiting your ability to do literally anything. The drug commercial that exists in only 2 countries on Earth. Every system we looked at today are deliberate choices that have been made by the government. Choices made by people, which means they can also be unmade by people. Most of the world already has. If any of these things shocked you, I'm sorry to say, but there's a lot more where that came from. Part 3 is coming, and if you thought today was uncomfortable, you just wait.
Oh, she's planning part 3. Okay. Oh, wow. Oh, this looks interesting. This is bad. Why Americans can't speak other languages? Maybe for tomorrow. It's only posted 16 hours ago, so it's relatively new. Oh, wow. Great video again. The one of yesterday was good, but this is also a lot of things opening up, and I hope, for me, it's abnormal, those things that I see, and when it's normal for the Americans. And I hope that a lot of Americans and a lot of the viewers of mine say, it's not normal. Not normal for me as an American, but also not normal for me as any other country I come from. But, wow. Damn. Okay. Good video. We will see more of her. I guess a part 3 is coming up soon. And I hope you liked this video. And if you did, then you should look at one of these videos or hit the subscribe button. That is always appreciated and totally for free. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.